Big hello and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. Today in the spotlight is a company that has been synonymous with hygiene. Over the years, the disinfectant label has been extended to soap, hand wash, kitchen cleaners, antiseptic liquids, and yes, hand sanitizers. However, the pandemic has nudged companies in new directions, and this consumer goods major is no exception. I'm joined today by Pankaj Duhan, the Chief Marketing Officer of Reckitt Benckiser South Asia Health, to talk to me about how the pandemic has been for Reckitt Benckiser and him personally, and how he's been navigating the pandemic, along with, of course, revelations and insights that have come from the market. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for joining us right here on Brand Equity. Truly a pleasure having you.
Hi, Sonali. An absolute pleasure to be here on this forum.
Let me start with the good news, and that's really about Dettol, the Dettol soap. I believe that COVID has played a big role when it's come to Dettol becoming the dominant brand in the hygiene category. It's overtaken other rival brands such as Lifebuoy and becoming the numero uno, selling soap in that vertical. What would you say? Would you say that it was the pandemic that gave it the much needed impetus to, garner that kind of market share to stand at number one, or were there already other factors playing in?
Dettol has always been the standout brand when it comes to germ and germ protection, right? So it is the number one trusted brand, right, for many of the Indian families, and especially the Indian moms and so on. And it has, for a long time, been the number one disinfectant brand, right? So with many offerings, whether it is, soaps, the number one hand wash, it is the number one antiseptic liquid, and so on and so forth, right? So always the credentials have been exceptionally strong. Our focus and attention has always been on figuring out the right concerns of the consumers, right? And in this particular case, the germ concerns have jumped through the roof, right? So due to the pandemic, the number of searches on germ protection, personal well-being, hygiene, home disinfection, etc., have jumped up on a sustained basis 6x to 10x, right, versus the pre-COVID periods, etc., right? And of course, during the initial periods of lockdown, they were 50x, right? So in that kind of environment where the spending shifts are also happening, right? So consumers are then wanting to spend money on anything that has to do with personal health, personal care, including education, right? So education, health, well-being, personal care, disinfection, germ protection, and so on and so forth. Those have gone up 60%, right? So from a spending choices point of view. And some of the discretionary categories have gone down. When such a massive disruption change is happening, right? So of course, there will be changes in market positions and all of those that will happen. But in such a major disruptive change, typically the brands that are the most trusted, that the consumers would go to, because these are uncertain times. And Dettol in that aspect stands out.
I want to go into my second question and then come back to, whether these consumer trends we've been seeing in the last 6 months are something that you see that will sustain, will the volume sustain? I want to talk about hand sanitizers. Now, this has been a category you guys have always been in. Of course, it has gone up exponentially. Talk to me about how you had to ramp up production in the initial months, and how tough was that to ramp up and distribute it pan India?
So that was a major challenge, right? So because the of course, as we got into it, that was preventative measures were the predominant defense against the pandemic, right? So there were the demand skyrocketed through the roof, and there was a lot of panic buying as well, right? And
Absolutely.
panic demand, especially during the initial phases of the lockdown and stuff. So the demand skyrocketed. The number of players, there were, to our estimate, I think about 500 new players jumped into the category, right? So it just went through the roof. In those particular times, right, it is very easy to cut corners, okay, and then try and fulfill the demand because it's there for the taking, right? But Dettol always stands for the highest quality standards, the highest quality protection, and so on. So we welcome all competition, okay? But it was a big challenge for us to ramp up productions to the levels that the demands were there. So we have ramped it up multifold. Okay. And then there is a challenge of distribution. Okay. There is a challenge of right distribution, right? And there is a challenge of ramping it up on the right SKUs, right? So
Right.
when you actually put it all together, it was a huge challenge. And to be completely transparent, we still haven't ramped it up enough to be able to meet the demand, but we are in a significantly better position to serve the consumers when they want the Dettol product versus 2-3 months ago. And I take it as a very welcome sign from a category perspective that there are so many new players that are coming into the category, right? There is all that conversation that happened on price control and so on and so forth. So all of those are very welcome news because it ultimately benefits the consumer.
Sure. But if we just for a minute, focus a little bit on this sanitizer opportunity that seems to have presented itself, and we've seen, all and sundry jump into this. Uh, my question is, do you foresee the sanitizer opportunity sustain post the COVID-19 crisis?
So over this period of time, I will compare and contrast, okay, the hand washing habits. And I'm taking hand washing as a surrogate for sanitizers, but for a minute, let's go with that, okay? In 2017, we had done some consumer surveys in urban and semi-urban India. Okay. And there what you got was only about 44% people, okay, claimed to be washing their hands after going to the toilet. And this is educated, urban, semi-urban people, etc. There were about 19% of people, only 19% people would wash their hands after getting into contact with a sick person, okay, or person with illness. Okay. There would be only 10% people that would wash their hands before making food. Okay. So these were all the statistics, okay, of pre-COVID, if I may actually say so. And as we take a look at the consumer behavior right now, the claimed behavior is drastically different, right? So now when we actually talk to the consumers, this is of course a digital survey and it is urban only. So take it with a pinch of salt. But the claim data is about 80% people claim to be following every steps of the social distancing, right? So about 83% say that they regularly wash their hands with either a soap or a hand wash. About 85% use a sanitizer, right? And another 85% people, right, also tends to wear a mask, right? So all aspects of social distancing, hand washing, etc., right, they have jumped up tremendously, right? So what happens is, will it remain at the same level? No, I think it'll keep on coming down a little bit as the concern goes down. But I think it will be at a substantially higher level, right, than what it was pre-COVID.
Sure. Okay, let's move to a category that's slightly more glamorous, and I'm talking about Durex. How has Durex fared during the lockdown? There was a joke in the initial few days when we were locked down. We had no clue as to how long we would be at home and jail, but there was a joke going around that, the end of 9 months post-March, there'll be a baby boom. The baby boom generation will come back. I'm not sure if that's going to be true or not, but how is that reflected in, let's say, condom sales and Durex in particular?
I think in that sense, I think the concerns of the consumers have shifted to the personal well-being significantly, right? So especially during the starting of the COVID period and so on. And on a category where where it is dependent on socializing, right, and access to social interaction, the condoms category per se has taken a hit, right? So year to date numbers, for example, for the category per se are about 19% or 20% down, okay, from a value perspective. Okay. At the same time, Durex as a brand continued to be in the conversation significantly, where we encouraged people to socially distance themselves, okay, and encouraged people to protect themselves, right? And whenever they get into, even within the family, right? So when the husband, the wife get into an intimate situation, to use protection and so on and so forth. So we encouraged all of those. So Durex has, over that period of time, strengthened its mind share and strengthened its market share, right? But the overall category from that perspective has taken a hit. But over the last month and a half, as the lockdown has eased, you've started to see the category bounce back significantly into strong double-digit growth.
Sure. I also believe that this has also given opportunity for organizations like yourself to do, long-term partnerships with institutions, so institutional partnerships. For instance, the partnership that you did with PVR,
Yeah.
on hand sanitization and sanitization dispensers. Is this something that, has seen a lot of takers where you've partnered with large organizations and institutions?
So historically, Dettol and disinfection per se, everybody has focused on disinfection and protection from germs inside their homes, right? So as we looked into it, but the protection, the need for protection is not just for inside their homes. Okay, the need for protection is equally outside. I dare say even more outside, right? Because that is where the tremendous amount of social interactions happen when the entirety of the unlocking will happen.
Yeah.
So when you take a look at it, the need for protection, the concern for protection, and the concern for the right social distancing and disinfection is the highest when you're outside the home, right? So we always had a very strong portfolio for inside the home, but we have branched outside into out-of-home solutions as well, right? So not just partnerships like PVR, and there are a few other like-minded organizations that we are in talks with, but we are also pioneered a lot of the new categories that can lend themselves to out-of-home solutions. For example, the disinfectant spray, right? So we always had products that were very well able to be used on hard surfaces, but nothing for soft surfaces like car seats. Okay, nothing for that you could take it outside with you, right? And to be able to, you get into a cab, you might need to disinfect the cab. You go outside to your office seat, you might need to. So instead of carrying liquids around, right, you could carry the disinfectant around. And we actually launched this well before COVID.
Oh.
So we launched it well before COVID because that was a need gap that we identified from a consumer point of view. Okay.
But was a consumer concerned pre-COVID about surfaces?
So the consumer, the mom, right, the mother of a household, she was always concerned about how to protect her family and how to protect her kids, right? And when it comes to disinfection, she had no solution for the sofas, the rugs, the carpets, the curtains, the pillows, and so on and so forth. And therefore, that was an unmet need that we had identified. And we launched it. It got off to a tremendous start. Dettol was the first one to launch it. And now, because it was a real consumer need, as well as the impetus that has been provided because of COVID, it has become a very, very high demand product.
Okay. Any other new product innovations?
Absolutely. So again, we did this pre-COVID itself. Okay. So we launched a laundry sanitizer. Okay. Because what typically happens is, especially when you have clothes of, young kids, okay, or, clothes of the older population, etc., where the susceptibility to illness is very high, and therefore germs is actually quite high. There you would want to get the ultimate protection of Dettol, right? And what typically happens with regular detergents, etc., it doesn't take care of the germs, right? So it leaves the germs behind. So we introduced the laundry sanitizer, and this actually takes care of most of the germs that are there in the laundry, and therefore giving you a hygienically clean laundry and disinfected laundry.
Another segment that I want to talk about, which is the male grooming segment, where I wanted to check with you on how that although you're a late entrant in that, how was the male grooming sector positioned pre-COVID, and what happened in terms of consumer behavior, during COVID or as we speak in the last 6 months or so?
The way we need to look at this particular category, right? And because we entered into the hair depilatory segment, right? So we entered with the Veet for Men launch, and Veet is a very well-known brand, but there are no major solutions, right, for men as well. right? When it comes to in-home depilations outside of lasers and so on and so forth, right? The way the pandemic has defined the category is very clearly bifurcated the category into in-home and out of home, right? So what people are doing is people are preferring in-home solutions, right? And people are not wanting to take the risk to go out, go to the salons and get themselves depilated and so on and so forth. And therefore, any solution that is a quality solution, right, related to in-home depilation, etc., is very much in vogue. So as the lockdown has started to ease, etc., we've seen tremendous demand for all of Veet products, okay, including the women's side as well as on the men's side, right? And this is something that continues to increase in demand, okay, and we're looking forward to it to become a substantial part of the business.
What are we expected to see in this male grooming space, from the Reckitt stable?
So we have a few launches up our sleeve, right? So, but first and foremost, we had launched the creams. Okay, so the hair depilatory creams, etc. It's fantastic. Works in 5 minutes. Takes care of, takes care of all of your hair depilation needs. Okay, and it's absolutely painless. You don't need anybody else to do it. You can do it yourself, and you don't need to, put in 3 hours at the salon, or leave yourself with prickly stubble that happens with the razor and so on. So this is a fantastic product, off to a fantastic start, very, very strong start. Okay. And then we have 2 or 3 innovations in the same space, in a similar space. I can't get into more details on it right now, but you'll see that fairly soon. So we are very buoyant on this.
If I had to ask you to look back over the last 6 months and look at all the categories that you operate in the health sphere, what categories have surprised you the most and why?
So the condoms category surprised me initially because that was the one that I, personally speaking, I would have thought that with the lockdown and when you're inside the home, lack of socializing, lack of entertainment options outside, etc., typically tends to the the curve on intimate occasions tends to go up, right?
Sure.
So which is why you see in the lower strata population, okay, as the education actually goes down or the lack of entertainment options actually goes down, etc., typically you tend to see the family size increase, right?
Yeah.
So you correlate that back to the number of sex occasions, etc. So I thought that it would increase dramatically, but not really. And we delve into the reasons for that, probably because of the mindset change and the mindset shift, etc. But starting to get back into positive space very, very well.
Any noteworthy consumer shifts you've seen in the way they've look at brands, the way they've been buying? We've of course seen the basket shift, and it's also moved only to essentials. But within that, if you have any insights or readings on how you've seen the consumer mindset shift.
So I think first of all, we talked about, and I won't delve into too much detail on it, we talked about the germ concern and the personal well-being, right? That has shot through the roof. But together with this, the consumers are also changing a lot on evolving in terms of where they want to be and where they're consuming the content. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Is in-home versus out of home, right? So anything that has a solution to provide the same benefit that they don't need to traverse outside the home are tending to do quite well, right? So, for example, salons, right? So, not many people want to venture outside, right, and go to get a stranger to depilate or cut your hair or groom yourself and so on and so forth. They'd much rather do it in the confines and the security and the protection of their home, right? So, in-home solutions like Veet, for example, have done really well because they provide the same or a better benefit than salons, right? But in the comfort, privacy of your home at much lesser the price, and within 5 minutes you can get everything done. So those have taken off, right? Similarly, the cinemas are not there, entertainment options are limited, so people are moving a lot more towards OTT contents and so on and so forth. Where they're buying, e-commerce has taken a significant high increase, not just in penetration, but also in terms of basket size, right? So post-pandemic, you're seeing about 1.8 times the average number of items purchased by the consumer, right? So it is increasing significantly.
So has that changed the way you have started investing as, a CMO?
When it comes to digital, e-commerce, and social kind of mediums and so on and so forth, I have always believed in creating conversations versus advertisements, right? And there's a difference because advertisements is very one way, right? The brand talking to the consumers, and that is not the way future brands will be built. So you need to have conversations with the consumers, and the conversations is multi-way and multi-times, right? So
But you're convinced that, a lay consumer is interested in talking to a brand.
they will be interested in talking to a brand provided the brand has a solid idea, right? So too many times you go with an average idea, and of course, no one's interested in talking to you, right? You go with a fantastic idea, okay, and there is immense amount of conversations that come your way. Durex is a prime example of it, right? It's a category where people don't want to talk about sex, right? But Durex tends to, it has a fantastic social platform, and it tends to do what we call as real-time marketing, right? On any trending topic, it has a point of view, and people resonate with that point of view, right? And therefore, people tend to experience the character of the brand. And therefore, whenever you take a look at any of the mindshare studies, right, on the category, you will find that Durex always is the thought leader in the category, right? So those are absolutely the so conversations is obvious is the way forward for me, and therefore the digital platforms play an immense role into it, right? So search, social, CRM, real-time marketing, and obviously some video content as well. But those are fantastic predictors of where the brand can go.
Would you say that, for you, 2020, 2021, when you end the year, will actually sum up uh, because of the uptakes we've seen in particular categories, will be a better year than the previous one?
I would see it can never be a better year. Right? So when the world has gone through, such a definitive crisis and a pandemic,
Sure,
would be a better year. The brands will be stronger.
that's
So,
stronger.
so, so that I would definitely vouch for. The brands are stronger, equities are much higher, the gaps versus competitions are increasing, shares are very strong, right? So, but we still have a long way to go, right? In genuinely making sure that the unmet needs of the consumers are met, right? And we launch products, we bring to them the products and the propositions that they truly, truly want. We still have a long way to go. So I would say stronger, not better.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, on that note, thank you so much for your time, Pankaj. I think you've made some solid points, and you're right. While we may have, some changes in our hygiene behavior in India, I think hopefully the pandemic will ensure that these habits stick, if not grow. And more power to you and all the brands that you represent.
Thank you so much, Sonali. An absolute pleasure to be here.